Who were the Diadochi of Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great's successors or Diadochi fought over a vast empire spanning from Greece to India in a series of bloody conflicts. The age of the Diadochi of Alexander the Great was one of the bloodiest pages of Greek history. A series of ambitious generals attempted to secure parts of Alexander's empire, leading to the creation of the kingdoms that shaped the Hellenistic world. This was a period of intrigue, treachery, and blood. Alexander the Great died on June 11, 323 BC in Babylon, possibly from typhoid fever. Before taking his last breath, Alexander was asked by his generals who would go his empire after his death. Alexander drew his final strength and said, "To the strongest." Alexander left behind him the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen. This vast empire contained lands from the Adriatic Sea all the way to the Indus River, and from Libya to modern-day Tajikistan. Of course, Alexander had just recently conquered these lands, and a great part of this empire was not firmly secured. The main problem with Alexander's death was that it was sudden and early. The Macedonian general had not spent enough time consolidating his rule. As a result, there was no man ready to succeed him yet. His sudden passing away also meant that the empire would soon fall in shock. From 323 to 281, a series of wars took place between Macedonian generals. These bloody wars are also called the Diadochi Wars, from the Greek word diadokos, which means successor. When Alexander passed away, the most important of his generals and guards gathered to discuss the future of the empire. There, it was agreed that the successor would either be Alexander and Roxana's yet unborn child, or Alexander's brother-in-law Philip III. The balance of power was fragile. Everyone understood that Alexander's son, who eventually was born and named Alexander IV, was nothing more than a puppet. At this point, the strongest man in the empire was Perdiccas, who became sort of the empire's regent until Alexander IV could grow old enough to rule. Except for his position, Perdiccas also enjoyed the advantage of legitimacy. Alexander the Great had given his ring to Perdiccas just before passing away, designating him responsible for the empire. Even though no one doubted Perdiccas openly, everyone was suspicious of Perdiccas, and Perdiccas was suspicious of everyone. A lot of other men undertook various administrative responsibilities, but the ones who proved the most resilient were Ptolemy, Antigonus, Antipater, Seleucus, and Lysimachus. The balance of power changed soon as Perdiccas was murdered in 321 BC. Already before that year, Ptolemy had managed to take Egypt for himself and secretly transport Alexander's body to Alexandria, which was under his control. This way Ptolemy secured one of the empire's richest and most prestigious parts. After Perdiccas' death, the Diadochi gathered in Triparadisus in 321 BC to partition the empire. The partition showed that the Diadochi were having their own ambitions, but the empire was still united under the names of Alexander IV and Philip III. After Triparadisus, Antipater replaced Perdiccas as the empire's regent. However, he died in 319 BC from old age, 81 years old. The next decades were a long and bloody conflict amongst the Diadochi. The dominant figure of the years between 320 to 301 BC was, without a doubt, Antigonus. While the rest of the Diadochi had given up on the dream of a grand Macedonian empire, Antigonus was still believing that Alexander's conquests could remain united under his name. Antigonus was having a lot of success and kept growing his domain to become the most formidable power between 320 to 301 BC. As ambitious successors were being eliminated one by one, Cassander assassinated Alexander IV in 311 BC. Delivering the final blow to Alexander's bloodline. Before the assassination, the greatest Diadochi of the time had signed a peace treaty recognizing the status quo of 4 separate kingdoms: Ptolemy in Egypt, Antigonus in the whole of Asia, Cassander in Europe, and Lysimachus in Thrace. Seleucus was left out of the treaty but maintained Babylon, of which he was the satrap. In 301, the allied forces of Cassander, Lysimachus, and Seleucus fought against Antigonus and his son Demetrius Aigonatas in the Ipsos of Phrygia. The battle was decisive for the future of the Hellenistic world. Antigonus died and his son Demetrius fled. Lysimachus expanded his realm to include Asia Minor, and Ptolemy added to his realm the lands of southern Syria. The aftermath of Ipsos, the greatest battle of the Diadochi Wars, was immense. Antigonus, the last successor believing in the empire's unity, was dead. Furthermore, Ipsos signified the final division between Europe and Asia, which would follow separate fates. As Cassander died of dropsy in 297 BC, Demetrius attempted to take the lands of Cassander, mainly Macedonia, for himself. However, he lost battle after battle and was captured by Seleucus in 285 BC. Lysimachus kept growing. At some point, he was firmly in charge of Thrace, Macedonia, and a good part of Asia Minor, but was also defeated and killed by Seleucus in the Battle of Curupedion in 281 BC. After this battle, Seleucus took the Asiatic lands of Lysimachus and prepared to invade Europe and return to his homeland, Macedonia. Then, unexpectedly, he was assassinated by his ally, Ptolemy Karanos, a son of Ptolemy who had allied himself with Seleucus. Antigonus II Gonatas, the grandson of Antigonus and the son of Demetrius, took advantage of the anarchy that followed the deaths of Seleucus and Lysimachus and managed to become king of Thessaly and Macedonia in 276 BC. This way, Antigonus secured the last unassigned area left in the empire. This was the end of the wars of the Diadochi. The Hellenistic world was set for the next few hundred years until the coming of Rome. The Antigonids would rule Macedonia, the Ptolemies Egypt, and the Seleucids Syria, Mesopotamia, and Iran. As we saw, the four great dynasties that emerged after Alexander's death were the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, and the Antigonids. The first two were established by the original Diadochi who had served in Alexander's army. Only the Antigonids were established by Antigonus II Gonatas, the grandson of the original Diadocos, Antigonus I Monophthalmus. Ptolemy I Soter had served under Alexander the Great as one of his bodyguards and most trusted advisors. He had also accompanied the Macedonian king on his visit to the oracle in the oasis of Siwa. After Alexander's death, Ptolemy became the satrap of Egypt during the rule of Alexander IV and Philip III. In 321, Perdiccas was moving Alexander's body to Macedon, where the great general would be buried. However, Ptolemy managed to trick everyone and stole Alexander's body, bringing it first to Memphis and then to Alexandria. There, Ptolemy constructed a luxurious tomb where Alexander was worshipped as a god.